Finally, some good news in the Middle East. The ceasefire between Israel and Hamas appears to be holding, so Palestinians are beginning to return to northern Gaza.
The devastation is clear, and it will take lots of money and effort to rebuild what Israel has destroyed. On Air Force One Saturday, President Trump told reporters that he spoke to the King of Jordan to outline his plan for the Gaza Strip. Let's listen.
I'm talking to General al-Sisi tomorrow, sometime I believe. And I'd like Egypt to take people, and I'd like Jordan to take people. You're talking about probably 1.5 million people, and we just clean out that whole thing. It's over the centuries that's had many, many conflicts inside, and I don't know. It's something has to happen.
The president offered up one idea that Jordan and Egypt could provide new homes for the displaced Palestinians. Now, the right of return was a major roadblock during the Oslo peace accords in Yasser Arafat's era.
This also has huge potential consequences for Jordan, a key US ally and stabilizing force, in our opinion, in the region. Here to unpack all of this is Annelle Sheline of the Quincy Institute for Responsible Statecraft. She worked at the State Department until she resigned last year. Welcome, Annelle.
Thank you for having me.
So let's start off with what President Trump said there. I won't put words in your mouth. What did you think of it?
Well, in terms of Trump's comments about the possibility of Egypt and Jordan taking the Palestinians in Gaza, this would be extremely destabilizing for Jordan. As you said, Jordan is a major strategic partner, not only of the United States, but also of Israel. And the population of Jordan already is approximately half Palestinian. So for there to be hundreds of thousands up to millions of Palestinians coming across the border was something that Jordanians expressed extreme concerns about when I was there last fall. I wrote a brief for the Quincy Institute about this, where the concern is this could bring down the government of King Abdullah because he would be forced, because Israel would be violating the terms of the 1994 peace treaty. Egypt and Jordan signed a treaty in 94 that stipulated that Israel would not displace Palestinians into Jordan. And so if Israel broke that treaty, King Abdullah would either have to respond somehow, which he would be unlikely to do, given the consequences he would likely face from Israeli retaliation and from the US. However, he would be unlikely to survive that politically, and his government could fall. And then it's a question of what would replace the Hashemite monarchy in Jordan. Likely would be a government that would be far less willing to engage with the United States or with Israel.
Yeah, I think the last thing the U.S. government would want to do is undermine the position of King Abdullah, given that Jordan has been such a staunch ally of ours. And I know a lot of the pro-Palestinian voices have said that, well, this would be akin to, I saw former Republican Congressman Justin Amash say any kind of forcible migration of the Palestinian people would be just akin to ethnic cleansing anyway, right? Their land is Gaza. They can't, now if they want to move willingly to some other country and that country is willing to take them, not taking them because the U.S. or Israel is forcing them, then I would say, well, that's perfectly fine. But I know many of the Palestinians, despite Gaza being a smoking pile of rubble right now, do intend and would like to rebuild in Gaza, not be moved elsewhere.
Exactly. And, you've heard this argument before. I've heard this argument where people say, well, why can't they simply go somewhere else? And I think the question should really be, well, why is Israel allowed to engage in policies that have reduced Gaza to a pile of rubble? And moving forward, what would be in the interests of the United States and in the interests of Israel would be some kind of resolution of this conflict that doesn't leave Palestinians displaced and continuing to seek justice. This has been the story of the Palestinian diaspora for decades at this point. And the only long-term resolution to this conflict must have some kind of justice and security for both Israelis and Palestinians.
And I want to pick up on that point, Annelle, because it seems to me when this kind of plan is discussed, and you're right, it comes up quite frequently, why can't they go somewhere else? Egypt and Jordan tend to be the most commonly cited places. But isn't the purpose of that really to absorb Palestinians into neighbouring countries to the point where any sense of a discrete Palestinian people or Palestinian nation in the general sense ceases to exist. And we know, for example, people like Mike Huckabee, who is apparently going to be President Trump's ambassador to Israel, has previously said that there isn't such a thing, in his opinion, as a Palestinian. So isn't that part of this whole picture?
That you're right. That is certainly the agenda of many of those pushing for this, the idea that the Palestinian people do not exist, or that they could somehow be erased by simply dispersing them among other countries. But this is what Israel tried to do, especially after 1967, when Israel seized the West Bank and all of the Sinai, ultimately, when Egypt and Israel signed their peace treaty in 1979. Israel returned the Sinai to Egypt. But the point was that Israel has displaced massive numbers of Palestinians before in hopes that perhaps this goal of national sovereignty for Palestinians would fade over time. And instead, it has only grown stronger, especially in the context of the horrors of what Israel has wreaked upon the civilian population of Gaza. This is a much more salient issue around the world, not only for the so-called Arab Street, where this was seen as perhaps having grown less salient in recent decades. Now it is very much at the forefront, but even among American young people across Europe, across the global population, the cause of Palestinian sovereignty has achieved much greater prominence as a result of what Israel has done to Gaza.
Well, but I take all that, I understand all that, and I'm sympathetic to it. How would you respond to the counter argument, or I guess the more pro-Israel side of things, saying, okay, well, said all that all may be true, but now we have to live in the here and now, and the reality is that as of today, even if it's morally justified or it would have been preferable in the past, giving statehood to the people, to the Palestinians now, would result in Hamas having a terrorist organization, being the legitimate government of this region, and given their pledge to continue to attack Israel in the future, that their leaders have stated a willingness to do that, and that October 7th happened. The reality is the country of Israel, the nation of Israel, like any other nation, cannot allow a terrorist state to be set up for its own security on its borders. What do we do now, given that is the reality that would ensue?
Well, Hamas only exists as a result of the Israeli occupation. So if Israel actually were to move forward with the creation of a Palestinian state, or alternatively, people have talked about the possibility of a one-state solution where Palestinians have equal rights to Israelis within the same territory, which, given the ways that Israel has worked to establish settlements, to subsidize the lives of settlers, to displace Palestinians from areas that were supposed to have been their future Palestinian state as a result of the Oslo process. All of this would essentially obviate or get rid of the need for Hamas. Hamas only exists because of this frustration with Israeli occupation. Whereas if Israel actually established a state of Palestine, this would be the most secure outcome for Palestinians, who this is what they've been asking for, and for Israelis, who then would be able to deal with another sovereign country, either alongside them or, again, in some kind of one-state reality where Palestinians had equal rights. There would no longer be a basis for the terrorism, for the frustration, for the lack of rights that Israel have imposed upon the Palestinian people for decades is why you see people responding with violence. And if I could add, even when Palestinians have tried to resist nonviolently, Israel has responded with such massive violence that it seems that extremism is truly the only option, which is part of why you've seen recruitment for Hamas grow so significantly during the course of the war on Gaza. Antony Blinken himself acknowledged this, my former boss at the State Department, that Hamas before October 7th wasn't able to recruit nearly as many people as it is now. And we've seen, especially in the footage of Hamas releasing the Israeli hostages as part of the ceasefire agreement, even the people of Gaza themselves have been surprised to see this sort of show of strength that Hamas has demonstrated. It's stronger because of what Israel has done to it, because the takeaway has been that violence is the only answer. Whereas if Israel were to respond with actually meeting Palestinians' needs and providing them with, again, either a state or rights within Israel itself, there would no longer be any need for Hamas.
Annelle Sheline, thanks for joining us on Rising.
Thank you for having me.
Up next, Elon Musk made a pitch to the German AfD party. We will discuss that. Stay tuned.